Hey folks, welcome to Rush Fans Roundtable, episode 110. I'm Brendan from the Rush Fans admin team, and we are continuing our conversations about 1982's Signals. On this week's episode, track 3, Seems to Me It's Chemistry. We'll chat about the music, about the lyrics, and even hear from someone who saw Chemistry played live. Drop a comment below, let us know what you think about this phenomenal song. Enjoy. All right, welcome to Rush Fans Roundtable. In this episode, we're talking about Signals, Track 3, Chemistry. I love this song, and as always, we're going to start with a reading of the Chemistry entry in the Rush Song by Song book. From there, we'll go through a bit of a lyrics discussion, talk about the musical composition, and finally, a brief discussion on Chemistry's short-lived placement on the live set. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the always reliable Jim, who's going to read my songbook.
All right, here we go. Chemistry. The last Rush song that would feature a lyrical contribution from Lee or Lifeson. This Pierce is unique in that the lyric was, in fact, a collaboration by all three members of the band. Consequently, the lyric itself has a style all of its own. Peart's intelligent and concise metaphor, coupled with a vibrant and eminently singable choice of language, makes this a pleasing lyric. Less precise than many of Peart's individual efforts, but considerably less esoteric than Peart's collaborations with Pi Dubois. The music shows a huge influence from the Police, with its ska groove and highly syncopated drums, but also breaks new ground for Rush with its coupling of synthesizer and guitar to create harmonies. The great influence on Alex Lifeson of the guitarist Alan Holdsworth is also apparent on this track, most notably on the fast and complicated repeating patterns, but also on the playful and improvisational guitar solo that is performed at the end of the song. This song, remarking on the mysterious scientific truth behind matters of the heart, invites a discussion of the scientific and physical background of what appear to be abstract things, music, emotion, and human interaction. It is appropriate that this brilliantly succinct song about mysterious connection shows the skill of Lee, Lifeson, and Peart, not just as the skillful individual musicians that they undoubtedly are, but as collaborators keen to serve the song above all. All right.
All right. Thank you, Jim. Yeah, so it's interesting. You know, that entry describes this as the last lyrical collaboration between all three members, and Neil's diary in the Signals tour book says that it's the first. So I think that means it's the only credited collaboration between all three members as lyricists. Yep. And we're going to talk about the lyrics, and in the interest of brevity, I'm going to read the first half of the song, including the chorus, and then we'll dive into the lyrics and discuss the second half. And by the way, in the opening line, it's pretty clear to my ears that Geddy is singing signal transmitted, message received. And he sang it that way live as well. But according to more than one official source, it's signals, plural, in the written song. So that's how I'll read it.
Yep.
Signals transmitted, message received, reaction making impact invisibly, elemental telepathy, exchange of energy, reaction making contact mysteriously, eye to eye, reaction burning hotter, 2-to-1 reflection on the water, H2O no flow without the other. Oh, but how do they make contact with one another? Electricity, biology. Seems to me it's chemistry. So opening it up to our roundtable, what do we think our three lyricists are trying to convey there? Ralph, you want to kick it off?
Sure. Yeah, I always thought this was kind of like a fun lyrical song and not too serious. But then as I was reading more into it, I'm getting like more about the synchronicity of, people, that they build off of each other, and maybe specifically Rush. One of the lyrics I thought was funny was 2-to-1 reflection on the water, and I was reading on a group chat that was thinking maybe that's 2112, 2-1 reflected back on you. So I just thought that was interesting. So, yeah, so that's my take on that.
No, that's a great thought. Anyone else want to chime in on that one?
Yeah, sure. I think, well, I love these lyrics, first of all, and I think it's really interesting that in the core book, Neil mentioned that this is their first collaboration. So I kind of wonder maybe if he enjoyed that approach, with Geddy and Alex starting the lyrics off, and then they handed them off to Neil, and he sort of rearranged things and structured them. That's what I read in something anyway. I wonder if he enjoyed that and was thinking, let's do this again. But unfortunately, that did not happen. But the lyrics, and it's maybe a little bit more the second part. I kind of think about it, it makes me think of multiple things. I mean, I definitely think about human interaction when I read these lyrics, but I also think about computer communication, right? A signal transmitted, a message received. I mean, that's very, very typical.
Did you say computer? Computer?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, computer. Yes. Very, very typical in that. And, back in 1982 when they wrote it, the internet wasn't what it was today, kind of thing. So we didn't have, this server's talking to that server. It's not as common now, but I think about that. I also think about musicians interacting with each other when they play. There's a lot of silent communication that happens when musicians play. Like a signal transmitted, message received could be sort of a look that one musician gives another on stage, and they're like, oh yeah. Or they play something that's, pretty exciting, and then everybody else, that excitement lifts, right? That message of the excitement's received and that excitement lifts, right? So I've thought of that as well, probably because I'm a musician and have experienced that too. But yeah, I think these lyrics are great. I think they're fun, but they also have an intelligence to them that maybe is not so apparent the very first time you look at him, but as you start looking at him more, it's like, oh yeah, these are great.
No, those are great thoughts. On picking up on the note about human interaction, I love the line "eye to eye." The way it's written, it's the literal I, the individual, reinforces the idea of how much you communicate without words. Just eye contact tells a story. I play guitar, and when I'm playing with a band, I like to face the drummer. I don't want to face away from the drummer. I like to make eye contact with the other musician. I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah.
So those are great points. Moving on to the second.
Answer Jim's question, if I may.
Yeah, please.
Neil in the Singles Tour books did say it was the easiest song to write for the album. So he did it. Geddy and Alex gave him the idea, and he just ran with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Geddy and Alex actually really came up with the title and sort of the whole theme, and then he fleshed it out from there. So moving on to speaking of music, we're going to see the word music a few times, moving on to the second half of the song. Emotion transmitted, emotion received, music in the abstract positively, elemental empathy, a change of synergy, music making contact naturally. 1, 2, 3, add without subtraction, sound on sound, multiplied reaction, H2O, no flow without the other. Oh, but how do we make contact with one another? And then, of course, the chorus repeats. Some interesting stuff going on there. Ryan, can we kick it over to you, kind of for your interpretation of the song?
Yeah, so I first wanted to start with the dictionary, I guess, definition of chemistry, because I think it's something that we kind of have to go through here, right? So there's 3 different definitions for 3 different, I guess, takes on this word. One is a science that deals with the structure and properties of substances and with the changes that they go through. 2 is the structure and properties of a substance, the way a substance changes and reacts with other substances. And 3, a strong attraction between people. I kind of have a slightly different take on this. Jim and Ralph, you both kind of touched on it, but I don't think this song is at all about 11th grade science class. Like, I don't, there's obviously some science terms thrown in here, right? There are obviously science terms thrown in here with H2O, reflection on the water, exchange of energy, things like that. But first and foremost, eye to eye, that's, signals transmitted, message received, reaction making impact invisibly. It's this entire song to me, and I'll touch on some of the other lyrics in a second, but this entire song to me is the band making a statement as to where they are in their career and how in tune they are with each other. They just produced Moving Pictures. It was their biggest hit album, right? They could have went in the direction of, let's do the same exact thing and make a crap ton more money and all that, whatever. But instead they decided to go in this direction, which is, it's similar to Moving Pictures, but it has its brand new twist on it, right? On synths and all that. And yeah, it's purposeful that the lyrics are credited to Lee, Lifeson, and Peart, because this song to me is all about the band and where they are with each other and how much chemistry they have. I mean, the term chemistry is used in sports. We're in the midst of the NFL playoffs, and what kind of chemistry does the quarterback have with the receiver? It's the same thing with music, right? The bassist has the chemistry with the guitar player. The guitar player has chemistry with the bassist, the drummer as well. So lyrically, oh, but how do they make contact with one another? It's kind of a rhetorical question, right? That's basically saying, oh, well, how did the three of, we're awesome together, right? We're Rush, and we're at our peak, really, musically. Electricity, biology, nope. It's just chemistry. We just have chemistry together. And it's purposeful that they use the word music in this, music in the abstract, and that's 100% on purpose, right? Music making contact naturally. At this point in their career, all this is coming natural to them. It's second nature, to use a Rush pun. And then and then 1, 2, 3, they state, well, how many members of the band are there?
Yeah.
That's purposeful. Add without subtraction. What are they adding on signals?
Yeah, keys.
Synthesizers. Yeah.
Synthesizers.
Keyboards.
They're adding keyboards without subtracting anything from the band. Sound on sound, multiplied reaction, right? H2O, no flow without the other. It's almost like, I think it was Getty that came out after like R40 and after Neil passed. There's no Rush without those three guys. And that's basically what's being said here in 1982, right? No flow without the other. And then, oh, but how do we make contact with one another? It repeats that. Again, now, Rush very well, or Neil could have very well just wrote all these lyrics himself. I mean, we don't know. And they just said, all right, well, this song is about literally us, so we're going to purposefully put Lee, Lifeson, and Peart as the credit, right? We don't know that. Maybe we do, but it could be kind of a fib. But no, I think that
it's not a fib, according to what Neil had written.
Okay, well, that's fair. That's fair. But either way, however you want to look at it, this is entirely, I think, how the band is so in tune with the other members, and how, I mean, to me, Signals is like peak Rush. Moving Pictures and Signals, that era is the band really at their best.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a really, I think, solid interpretation. And like you pointed out, you can just go to line after line after line and kind of apply it to your analysis. Right. Guys, what do you think of Ryan's take?
It's interesting, and I think that, at this point in their career, I'm sure they were extremely in tune with each other. Playing that much, writing, collaborating, touring. You get to the point where you could kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Anticipate, what the other could be thinking or where they might go, which would make collaborating easier, and it makes interaction, during live shows really, really fun.
And the genesis of this song, according to Rush lore, is that on the Moving Pictures tour, they got into the habit of recording all of their sound checks. And they recorded the sound check, and there was very specific ideas and riffs from all three members, chorus, verse, bridge, that ended up coming together to bring this song to life. Mm-hmm. So, that kind of supports Ryan's pretty cool theory as well.
Yeah.
So speaking of the music, from a musical perspective, a lot going on here. You got that explosive intro with the synthesizer, what I find to be really interesting guitar and drum work. Paul, you want to dive in first with, kind of your take on the musical composition of the song?
Sure. Well, you kind of addressed it in the Rush Signals tour book. Neil talks about John Erickson, the concert sound engineer, was recording all the sound checks at this point during the Moving Pictures tour. So after a while, they kind of all got together in the studio. They started listening to all these tapes, and they went, oh, hold on a second. I like that. And I like this. And the song was basically written, like it almost wrote itself musically, is what they said. They just had an idea for the lyrics, and they just all three worked together. Back to the lyrics, I think we all know that Geddy and Neil worked together a lot on the lyrics. Like, they had to feed each other, but for the publishing rights, they had come to that agreement, one third. But musically, you're right. It starts out, it takes a whole minute before we hear the first lyric. So it just got this long synth intro that kind of builds up. And, you got Alex kind of kicking in with his, almost like a mini solo. It just goes up and down in the riff, and you're like, okay, where's this going? The drums aren't overly complex, but they fit the song, right? And then you get into the first verse. The song just flows really well. And it's, when you listen to the album, it's like a change of pace between the Analog Kid and Digital Man. It's a completely different change of pace, I find, which is kind of fun, right? But musically, I mean, I'll be honest, it's not in the top songs for the album, but it's still a great song overall. There's no really bad Rush songs, let's be honest. I know you'll get comments on that about that. I don't care, but you've got two verses, the choruses, and at the end, it's like a whole minute of the musical outro, I guess you want to call it, with Alex's solo in there too. I don't know. It's a beautiful song. It just flows really well, goes well with the lyrics. I don't know what else to say. I mean, it's just it's a nice calming song. It's not like heavy rock. It's not a fast tempo, but it just flows really well with the lyrics. Everything melts perfectly.
Yeah.
Well said. Well said. Jimmy had a comment.
Yeah, I agree. Like, a lot of pretty much everything Paul said about the music, except I actually really, really love this song. But the music is so great. What a couple of things that really stand out is that when the synths are there, but they're not taking away from anything, right? I mean, sometimes like in the later albums, you hear more synths, but you wind up hearing less guitar, right? Because the guitar and synth are competing for the same sonic spectrum. But here, I don't feel that. I feel like the synths are coming in and doing something, but everything is still there, and then the synths will drop out a little bit. I kind of feel it that way. And yeah, the drum part is really interesting and fun. Like in that, I guess what I'll call the pre-chorus, where Neil was kind of going up, keeping time and going up and down the toms. That was super fun to learn. And, way back in 1982 or early in 1883, whenever I was learning this, there was no such animal as, just look up that drum transcription. Yeah, it did not exist. So, you're putting the needle back and learning it by ear, which was a really fun way to do it. And the guitar solo is really great. It's interesting. I wrote in my notes, it fits the music perfectly. He plays a lot of high and bendy notes. And I didn't really think about an Alan Holdsworth, tie-in until I read that in the song by song. And it's like, yeah, I do hear some Holdsworth influence there, in the stuff that Alex played. That's pretty interesting. And the outro guitar solo and how that goes straight into those drum fills that Neil has, and then they end the song. I just think that's a fantastic way to end it. And it's interesting how he does his drum fills at the end. It's kind of similar to what we'll see again on Lock and Key from the Hold Your Fire album, where Neil is playing some extended fills, like, not in place of a guitar solo, but sort of in that kind of vein and that spirit of the guitar solo. I kind of get that he's doing that with these fills too. And they're great. They're great fun to play. They're awesome.
Based on the Signals album, the Signals tour book, this would have been probably one of the first songs written for the album.
Yeah,
because this is basically written during was basically written or played during the Moving Pictures tour, right? During sound checks, just goofing off on stage between songs, and, testing the levels.
Which I think also further proves my point of the lyrics, because I mean, Moving Pictures, again, this era they're at their peak, both musically, lyrically, in tune with each other. I mean, especially if it was written during that era, that tour, or that soundtrack, they just put out this phenomenal record, and here they are, literally writing about how good they are together. I just wanted to say about the solo, like, this is one of my favorite Alex solos, but I think this is probably one of the most underrated, forgotten about Alex solos, and maybe that's a topic we can do at some point. Most underrated Alex solos. But really, I think it is, because, I mean, people point to the Analog Kid for, this crazy solo. People point to the Weapon for, how awesome that solo was on the Grace Under Pressure Live and things like that. Everybody seems to forget about the guitar work on this song, and I think you could argue that the guitar work on this song is some of Alex's best of the entire synth era. And Jim, I wanted to ask you as a drummer, so the drum fill that Neil plays at the end of this solo, is that hard?
Yes.
Yeah. There you go.
It doesn't sound that hard, but then when you sit behind the kit and try to play it, it's not as easy as it sounds.
Yeah, I mean,
I do it in the car all the time. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I'm just
it's you just kind of just do this and
nail the arms and go. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
In all seriousness, if you look at the drum transcription, which I have drum transcription now, for it's not overly complicated, and playing it, once you learn it, it's not overly complex. It's not. I would not say that it's simple. I think one of the keys to that fill is being able to play it in time, moving between the 16th note triplets and the 16th notes, and this kind of the offbeat hits and things like that go on. So that was probably way more of a description you were wanting to get at.
No, it's good. I mean, I don't fully understand that, but the musicians will, and that's what matters. I of course was referencing the Time Machine outro skit.
Yes.
Paul Rudd asks Neil.
That's my answer.
Yeah.
It's hard.
You got it. Thank you.
I got it, Brian. It's all good.
Jim, I wanted to mention my absolute favorite part of the entire song is Neil related, because I love as they're in the pre-chorus, and he's kind of slowly tapping that ride cymbal, and then when they say "Oh, but how," and he doubles the beat on the ride cymbal to kind of psych you up and raise the tension as you go into the chorus. That to me, it just adds such energy to the song.
Yep, it does. Yeah, even something so subtle of that, moving to just quarter notes on the bell to eighth notes on the bow of the cymbal, it does add a ton of excitement, just changing things up like that. I agree.
I mean, look, we could all go on all day about Neil and the ride cymbal.
Yeah.
I could build on what everybody's been saying. For me, I find that, Signals is the start of the synth era. I think this is a great balance between the guitar and the keyboard. Like, Alex got his guitar solo, whatever you call it, at the beginning. There's notes going over the keyboards. The verses got the riff. And then during the verses, the bridges, whatever they are, he's kind of playing along with the synth. So he's kind of going in and out different roles throughout the song. And even during the choruses, to speak to the chemistry of the band, I love that those staccato beats that they're all just playing together.
Mhm.
I think that's kind of musically symbolizing the chemistry between them all.
Yeah.
Great insights. I love that solo as well. So I know, of course, that on the Subdivisions episode, there was a lot of discussion about the various live incarnations. Chemistry is a unique song. It was only played on the Signals tour of 82 and 83, and then for whatever reason, it was retired. It appears on no official live recordings, although I know many of us have heard live versions on bootlegs and on YouTube, which sound incredible. And we're all very lucky and very envious because I believe your first Rush show was on the Signals tour. What can you tell us about that show and about Chemistry Live?
Well, okay, so it was 39 years ago. So I'll do my best to remember what my 15-year-old self was feeling. But my very first time seeing my very favorite band was, I mean, just completely mind-blowing. And I'm sure I totally freaked out when they started every single song because I got to hear it. But I do remember them start. I probably don't remember 100% of the song from almost 40 years ago, but I do remember them starting it out and how exciting it was just to start hearing that and they go through it. And I do remember just that overall the performance was fantastic. Their ability to replicate what they produce on an album, they replicate that live really, really well. I mean, down to, I know like in later years they would tune down, because Geddy did not sing quite as high, but, down to Geddy's vocals, the parts that all three of them played, it just, I mean, it sounded like a live version of the album. It just sounded so good. It was so fun. I mean, yeah. I could probably go on for an hour about how awesome that show was.
Sure. Any questions from the group? Comments on Chemistry Live?
I just wanted to say that well, first of all, I hadn't. This is one of my favorite Rush songs ever, and I hadn't listened to this song in months up until this week, and I've forgotten how freaking amazing this song is.
Awesome.
I never really listened to this song. I never seeked out a live version of the song because I just kind of figured all the versions were like terrible quality. But as Jim was speaking, apologies, I didn't listen to hardly anything you just said. I was looking up live versions of this and playing it in my headphones. And there's a version on here. It's Chemistry, the Analog Kid, and Countdown live on YouTube. And this sounds phenomenal. And I did catch the part, Jim, where you said that it sounds so much like the studio version. I mean, just hearing like that solo and that drum fill at the end of the solo live. I mean, this song should have been like brought out on Clockwork Angels or R40 or something because
heck yeah.
I mean, what better time to pull this song out than one of those two shows?
With all
the synth stuff they did at Clockwork.
I mean, they really dipped into that mid '80s catalog and Clockwork, and I would love to have heard this song.
He could have rotated this
again.
with the Analog Kid or something like that, maybe a couple times as like like what they did with Losing It, where that came out 6 times or whatever it was. You could have threw Chemistry in there like 6 times.
Yeah.
Something like that. But man, that sounds amazing. I wish I had been born 20 years earlier.
Yeah. I mean, I was just so fortunate that my parents allowed 15-year-old me to go down to Reunion Arena in Dallas, which does not exist anymore. The Reunion Arena does not exist. Dallas exists, right? The arena is not there anymore.
Ooh, that's good to know.
Yeah.
I was worried for a second there.
Yeah. So I was really fortunate to be able to catch that. I feel very, very lucky.
I think they prided themselves in being able to recreate the sound of the album. Like almost as immaculate as they could. Yes, we all agree. Like in the later years, Geddy's voice wasn't there, so they had to.
Right.
And I found the later years they would slow down the tempo a little bit. you hear
Yeah.
it, but
They've done
But,
that a bit. Yeah.
but other than that, like back in those days, like you said, at this point, Singles is the 8th album they've done together, and they're probably at the peak, and they're going to keep going.
It's
Like Geddy's voice is just perfect. Like he's got no issues with his voice at this point yet. And they have the chemistry. They worked well together. They, like they probably read each other's minds, and they're not working on their musicianship anymore. They have the expertise. Now it's the songwriting, and you can see it.
Yeah.
They decided to go in a different direction, and unfortunately, we've talked about this outside of the roundtable, but this was Terry Brown's last album working with the band,
Right.
and it is because musically they were going in different directions, and he basically wasn't on board. And I think everyone agreed it was time for a change and time to part ways. It wasn't bad, but it is what it was, right? And
I think at the end of the day, if you're a Rush fan who kind of shied away from the synth era or whatever, or once they went in this direction with Signals, started the Analog Kid and Chemistry, really, because they're just two fantastic guitar sounding synth era tracks. And this is just a forgotten about song. I think for most fans, I mean, obviously the diehards, I'm sure, probably put this on all the time, but if you're kind of just a casual fan, go back and give this song a listen, because man, it rocks.
the whole album.
This is
But
one of my
yes.
first. It's one of my first Rush songs. Like as a fan, back when I was 15, back in the early 90s, this is one of the first songs that I heard that pulled me in and kind of demanded my attention.
On the radio, or just like
a friend of mine introduced me to Signals. I heard Subdivisions. I think he might have skipped over the Analog Kid, which is a big mistake, but I think he might have skipped right to Chemistry. And I heard those explosive, and again, you've got a minute or so long intro on Subdivisions, and then a minute or so long intro on Chemistry. And so I was just immersed in this kind of ambient wall of music, and it definitely stayed with me. And that was kind of my introduction. And then I listened to Roll the Bones, which was brand new, and that's kind of how I became a Rush fanatic. So Chemistry is an important song for me in the formation of my kind of fandom, so to speak.
That's cool.
But that's amazing, Jim. Excited that you were able to have that moment as a teenager. I know we all have one or two cool Rush stories. That's right up there with the best of them. Guys, any final thoughts on the song before we wrap up? Or have we said it all?
I think we're good.
We're good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys for participating tonight. We certainly hope you viewers enjoyed the discussion. Please do like and subscribe. Help the YouTube channel grow. We'd love to hear from you in the comments. What does Chemistry mean to you? What do you think of Ryan's interpretation? Did you get a chance to see it live as Jim did? We'd love to hear from you. And last but not least, please, another Rush pun, please monitor this station, because next on the Signal series, the Rush fans are going to talk about Digital Man. Have a good night, everybody.